grew up in a small town, Raleigh, Illinois, about 350 people. Growing up, I was very competitive all the way through junior high, high school, even elementary school. Every sport I could get my hands on, I did. Even just on the playground, I was super competitive. My big focuses growing up were basketball, being in that region, like right around Indiana, Southern Illinois, and Kentucky. It's a big basketball community. So that was my first passion. That kind of played into track, baseball. I was a 4 or 5 sport athlete year round, always in competition. I even played soccer for 8 seasons as a kid. I went to school early to play spring ball at SIU. Ended up losing my scholarship, and when I lost my scholarship is kind of where I found martial arts. From there, I ended up going down to Georgia. My mother moved down there, gave me in-state tuition, and I was going to walk on to play for Georgia Tech. At that point, I had to sit out a semester. So when I sat out that semester at school, I picked up boxing, which was my favorite sport growing up. If you asked me as a kid, like, what was the hardest, most difficult sport, most competitive sport, I would always say boxing. From there, I was lucky enough to find mixed martial arts. I thought the sport was dead. I remember when I was a kid watching it and being kind of fascinated, like when I was like first and second grade. But I genuinely thought the sport was dead. And then when I saw guys doing it, I kind of asked around the gym, and I got involved with a martial arts school that was a competitive fight school in Atlanta, Georgia, when I was 19. It took me, I committed to a full year of like wanting to train martial arts full time before having my first fight. And from there, it just kind of took off. I fell in love immediately. And once I fell in love, I was addicted every day. I was working part-time, I was going to school full-time, and I was training twice a day still. No matter what, I was always there. I was doing like kickboxing in the morning, and I'd come in back and do jiu-jitsu or wrestling at night. I was just fascinated with it. I got involved with a hardcore gym, and then once I got into the hardcore gym, which is where Brian Bowles, Forrest Griffin, a good group of guys were out there, Rory Singer, and the head coach being Adam Singer. They kind of pushed me into like better promotions and better fights. My next few fights were in Atlanta, Georgia area, and then from there I got my first big break, which was to go down and fight in the Dominican Republic. I remember being 21, my mom dropped me off at the train, handed me 20 bucks, and it was the first time I ever left the country. So I was pretty young, pretty naive, coming from a small town. It was kind of a big moment for me. You know, this is what I wanted for a professional career. So at this point it mattered. When the first fights in Athens, Georgia, it didn't matter. I was going to school full time, and I wasn't necessarily focused on making a career out of fighting. But at this point, I think I was at my 4th or 5th professional fight, and I knew that I wanted to make this a full-time job. I remember I stepped off the plane, first time out of the country. They did the weigh-ins at the airport. It was the night before the fight. Woke up the next morning. I hadn't really been around the Dominican at all yet, and I remember like we get out in the Dominican, like we're driving to the fight, and it was one of the crazy experiences for me. Is like I look around and like guys are just holding shotguns on the side of the road, and I'm busy going to a professional fight, just like, wow, what have I gotten myself into? I just remember listening to my opponent warm up, and you just hear boom, big, like just him hitting pads and stuff like that, and that was probably the most nervous I ever got for a fight. Probably. I do get some nerves before fights. I tend to equate them to excitement, but this one was definitely, I was just nervous. We were fighting in a ring. I came out, it was a quick knockout again, and then from there I got another opportunity very shortly, which was the biggest opportunity in my career at that point, and which was probably what put my name on the map, which I got a fight down in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro against Asuero Silva, who he was a big name. He'd fought in Pride, which was a huge organization at the time in Japan. He fought in the UFC, and he'd done well in all these organizations and fought big names. We were the main event of the card, and I was just pumped for that fight. I remember thinking it was going to be a very tough fight because he'd never been finished. I didn't expect to finish him, and I ended up finishing him in the second round with a TKO stoppage.